The animal is bigger than he expected. He knew it would be big. He has seen red deer before, grown up around them, watched them from a distance, helped carry the meat back to camp after the older hunters made the kill. But seeing one up close, through the trees, 15 meters away, standing still in the morning mist with its head turned slightly toward him, it's bigger than he expected. It is 10,000 BC. The ice sheets that covered most of northern Europe for 20,000 years have been retreating for the last 5,000. In their place, birch forests, reed lakes, river valleys full of elk and deer and wild boar. The climate is warming, the world is opening up, and a band of about 40 people is camped on the edge of a lake in what will one day be called Yorkshire, England. This hunter is 17 years old. Today is his first solo hunt. Forget everything the movies taught you. No caves, no grunting, no clubs. Just a community of people so skilled at living in this world that modern humans couldn't last a week trying to copy them. This is day one of a week in the Stone Age, and today we follow the hunter. Let's step back 12,000 years. He wakes before the light. Not in a cave, that's the textbook version, the one with the clubs and the slouching. He sleeps in a structure made from birch poles and animal hides, cone-shaped, waterproofed with bark and leaves, warm inside. The fire at the center has burned down to orange embers that still hold enough heat to keep 8 people comfortable. 8 people in 3 meters of space. He has slept like this his entire life. He does not find it crowded. Outside, the camp has 6 of these structures, arranged in a loose crescent at the lake's edge. 40 people total, 12 adults, 16 children, 4 elders who can no longer run, but who know more about this forest than anyone alive, and 2 dogs. The dogs are sleeping near the embers when the hunter steps over them on his way out. The older one, grey around the muzzle, opens an eye, recognizes him, and goes back to sleep. The younger one lifts his head and watches, ready to come if called. The hunter does not think of the dogs as remarkable. He has never known a world without them. But they are, in fact, one of the most extraordinary things his species has ever done. And it happened so long ago that nobody in the band remembers it as anything but the way things have always been. There was a time, the oldest stories reach back to it, when there were no dogs, only wolves. And somewhere in that long darkness, something happened. The bolder wolves, the ones less afraid of fire, began lingering at the edges of camp, taking the scraps and the bones and the things people threw away. The people did not drive them off. Maybe because the wolves warned them when something moved in the night. Maybe because a wolf pup, taken young and raised by the fire, turned out to be loyal in a way that surprised everyone. But it stuck. Over more generations than anyone can count, the wolves who were calmer, friendlier, more willing to work alongside people, were the ones who thrived near the fires. They had pups. The pups were calmer still. And slowly, the wolf at the edge of the firelight became something new, something that had never existed in the world before. An animal that chose people. An animal that would throw itself between a human child and a charging boar for reasons that have nothing to do with its own survival. It started with a wolf brave enough to come closer and a person generous enough to let him stay. The hunter steps outside into the dark. The younger dog gets up and follows. He dresses before he wakes the camp. Trousers and a tunic of stitched red deer hide, softened by weeks of working with bone tools until the leather moves with him. A cloak of beaver fur, boots wrapped tight with strips of sinew. The clothing is not rough or primitive. The bone needles used to make it are some of the finest tools his people produce, and the stitching is tight enough to be waterproof. He has been warm in cold weather his entire life. He takes his bow from the rack beside the door. The bow took his uncle 3 weeks to make. Yew wood, carefully selected, the grain running perfectly along the stave, the tips reinforced with antler. The arrows are masterpieces of miniaturization. Flint blades no larger than a thumbnail, hafted into wooden shafts with pine resin and bound with sinew. They are called microliths, and they are so precisely made that, 12,000 years from now, people who try to recreate them will spend years getting it wrong. He picks up his spear as well, just in case. The lake is silver. The mist is low and thick, rising off the water in slow columns. Somewhere across the water, a heron calls once and then is silent. This is his world, all of it. He has never been more than 2 days' walk from this lake, and he does not need to be. Everything is here. Fish in the water, deer in the forest, hazelnuts and water lily roots along the shore. The forest is not a dangerous wilderness he survives in spite of. It is a garden he knows by heart, tended by 12,000 years of accumulated knowledge about what grows where, what moves when, what the weather does before it does it. But this morning he is also nervous. For the last 2 years he has hunted in groups. 4 or 5 people moving together, the experienced hunters taking the shots, the boy watching and learning and carrying the kill back. Today, his uncle told him last night, is different. Tomorrow. The deer have been moving south along the lake edge since the new moon. He knows the path. He has scouted the gap in the birch trees 4 times in the last week. Tomorrow is today. He goes. He moves through the forest the way he was taught. Heel first, weight shifting slowly, testing each step before committing. The dog moves beside him, low and quiet. An hour in, the dog freezes, ears forward. The hunter hears it a moment later, the soft, tearing sound of an animal grazing. He is at the edge of a small clearing, and there, 15 meters away, a red deer stag grazes with its head down, bigger than he expected. He brings the bow up slowly. The movement is so practiced it barely registers as conscious thought. He draws back to his cheek. The stag lifts its head. He releases. The arrow takes the stag in the neck. It lurches, turns, goes down in the long grass at the clearing's edge. The dog streaks across the clearing, but stops short of the animal and circles it, barking once, then falling silent. He has been taught this too. The kill belongs to the band. The hunter stands there for a long time without moving. What happens next is not what the movies show. There is no victorious shout, no raised fist. He walks slowly to the animal, kneels beside it, and waits until he is certain it is dead. His uncle told him about this, the acknowledgement, the moment between the killing and the use of what was killed. He does not have a word for what it is. Prayer is the closest his language has. But it is something like gratitude and something like recognition. This animal was alive this morning and is not alive now. That distance deserves at least a moment of his attention. His people have been doing this for 100,000 years. It costs nothing. It changes everything about what kind of person it makes you. He cannot carry it whole. He sections it, wraps the pieces in the hide, ties them into a bundle he drags. The dog carries a smaller piece in his jaws, proud of himself, trotting ahead and looking back to make sure the hunter is following. When the camp comes into view through the trees, his uncle is sitting outside shaping an arrow shaft. He looks up. He looks at the bundle. He looks at the boy. He says nothing, but his face does the thing it does when he is pleased, which is not quite a smile, but something quieter and more permanent. The camp in the middle of the day is the fullest it gets. Hunters back from the lake with fish. Gatherers back from the forest with baskets of hazelnuts and wild garlic. Children weaving reed baskets. An elder shaping antler into a harpoon point. This is the thing hardest to communicate across 12,000 years. These are not primitive people. They are extraordinarily skilled, highly specialized men and women who have spent their entire lives learning one environment in exhaustive detail. The afternoon is for the work the morning's success makes necessary. The deer hide needs scraping before it stiffens. The hunter works one end, his uncle the other. And while they work, because this is the tradition, the uncle tells the old stories. He tells him about the giants. There was a time, the uncle says, long before anyone's grandfather, when the land was colder and the great beasts walked the open ground. The mammoth, taller than 3 men, covered in long red-brown hair, with tusks that curved out longer than a person is tall. The woolly rhinoceros. The giant elk, antlers wider than a hut. Hunting a mammoth was nothing like hunting a deer. A bow would barely annoy it. The whole band hunted together, and they used the land itself as a weapon. Enormous pit traps, dug by hand over many days, then covered with branches and leaves. Cliff edges used to turn a herd's own panic and weight against them. Men died on these hunts. But a single mammoth was meat and fat for months, bones for tools, tusks for carving. People built homes from mammoth bones in the old times, the uncle says. Walls of curved tusks and stacked skulls. The hunter listens, scraping the hide, trying to imagine an animal so large you could live inside its bones. The dogs always hunt with them. That is the other half of the story. A dog can smell what a man cannot, hear what a man cannot, run down what a man cannot. The partnership between these people and the animals at their feet is not sentiment. It is the most successful hunting alliance the world has ever produced. The sun is low when the camp settles into its evening shape. Fires are built up. People move toward each other the way they always do at this hour, drawn by warmth and smell and failing light into a loose circle. They eat well tonight. Deer haunch turned over fire until the outside is dark and the inside runs pink. Water lily roots baked in the embers. Hazelnuts cracked on flat stones. The distribution of food is so deeply instinctive it is invisible. The best hunter does not eat more than anyone else. The surplus from a good day goes into everyone's body. This is not generosity in the modern sense. It is a technology, developed over hundreds of thousands of years, for surviving a world where you never know when the next good day will come. The children eat first. They always eat first. After the meal, someone begins to play. A bone flute. A section of birdwing bone with holes cut into it, producing a sound thin and high and exactly right for an open fire at the edge of a lake in the dark. Others join in with their voices. An old woman begins to tell a story, how fire was given to people, or taken, or found, depending on which version she tells. The stories change, the core of them does not. The hunter sits with his back against a birch tree, the dog asleep against his leg, his shoulder aching from dragging the deer. He is exhausted in the specific, deep way that comes only from a full day of physical effort outdoors. He does not want to sleep yet. The lake at night is extraordinary. The stars reflected so clearly that on still nights it is hard to tell where the water ends and the sky begins. The great river of light arches from one tree line to the other. He knows which stars rise with the salmon runs and which rise with the first frost. The sky is his calendar, his compass, and his story. He thinks about the moment before the arrow, the stag lifting its head, the way everything in his body went still, not frozen but focused, narrowed to a single point of readiness he had never felt before. He understands now that this is what his uncle has been trying to teach him for 2 years. Not aim, not breath, not technique, that stillness. He thinks about the giants in his uncle's stories, the men who died on those hunts, and the dogs that did not come home. He will never see those animals, but he carries the stories now. And one day, beside a fire like this one, he will tell them to someone younger, and the thread will go on. The cold finally drives him in. So that was day 1 in the Stone Age, 10,000 BC, the shores of a lake in what is now Yorkshire, England. Not the cavemen of the textbooks, a community of extraordinarily skilled people who made precision arrowheads and bone needles and bone flutes, who hunted giants in the stories of their grandfathers, who shared every kill equally, who acknowledged the lives of the animals they killed, who told stories and made music around fires just like this one, and who, somewhere in their unimaginably long past, did something no species had ever done before. They let a wild predator cross the fire and stay. And that animal, the dog asleep at the hunter's feet, would walk beside the human race for the next 12,000 years. These were not primitive people. They were people, fully formed, fully human, operating at the limit of what a human mind can learn about a world. They were also living at the end of something. 2,000 years after this morning, the first farmers would arrive, and the world these people knew would begin its long transformation into the world we live in now. They didn't know that. We do. That gap between what they knew and what we know is the most humbling distance in all of history. What do you do when someone is dying and the nearest hospital is 12,000 years away? You do what humans have always done. You watch. You remember. You try. Somewhere in a camp at the edge of a lake in what will one day be called Yorkshire, a woman is kneeling beside a man who has been burning with fever since yesterday evening. His skin is slick. His breath comes in short, shallow pulls. The children have been kept away from his shelter. The camp is quieter than usual. That particular kind of quiet that settles over a group of people when one of them might not make it. She is not a doctor. That word does not exist yet and will not exist for thousands of years. She has no laboratory, no textbooks, no stethoscope, no thermometer. What she has is something older and, in its own way, more extraordinary. A mental library of every plant, root, bark, mushroom, berry, and lichen within a day's walk of this camp, built over a lifetime of observation, tested by generations of women before her, and stored entirely inside her head. She is the healer. She is also a mother, a gatherer, a hide worker, a woman who can gut a fish faster than anyone in the band, and who knows where the best hazelnuts grow along the southern shore. But this morning, the thing that matters is the knowledge that nobody else carries. This is day 2 of A Week in the Stone Age, and today we follow the healer. Let's step back 12,000 years, before dawn. She has been awake most of the night. The man with the fever, one of the older hunters, perhaps 35, which in this world makes him experienced but not elderly, began shaking after last night's meal. By the time the camp settled, he was too hot to touch, his eyes carrying the unfocused, glassy look she has learned to recognize as the body fighting something it may not win. She sleeps in the shelter next to his. She heard him calling out in the dark, talking to people who were not there. Fever talk. She has heard it before, and not all of those people survived. She lies in the dark, her 2 children asleep against her. One is 7, the other 4. Their father died 2 winters ago, taken by a wound that went bad after a boar hunt. She cleaned it. She packed it with moss and chewed yarrow. She did everything she knew. It was not enough. The wound turned dark, and then the smell came, and then the fever, and then the silence. She does not think about this often, but she thinks about it now, listening to the sick man breathe. She gets up before the light. The camp is still. The lake is black. The fires are low orange points in the dark. She can hear the sick man's breathing from outside his shelter. Ragged, fast, too fast. She kneels at the entrance and puts her hand on his forehead. Still burning. Hotter than last night. She has maybe 3 hours. Dawn. She goes to the lake. The lake edge at dawn is her pharmacy. She knows it the way a surgeon knows an operating theatre. Every tool in its place. The reeds along the shore. The willows that grow in a stand at the southern curve, their branches trailing in the water. The willows are what she needs first. She strips bark from the youngest branches, thin, pale green on the outside, white and wet underneath. She does not know the chemistry of what she is doing. She cannot know that the inner bark of the willow contains salicin, a compound that, 12,000 years from now, a German chemist will synthesize into acetyl salicylic acid, and the world will call aspirin. What she knows is this: when you boil willow bark in water and give the liquid to someone with a fever, the fever often comes down. She knows this because her mother knew it, and her mother's mother, and however many mothers before that, reaching back into a darkness so deep it has no bottom. This is not guesswork. This is empirical medicine. Observed, repeated, transmitted, refined across more generations than any written tradition will ever match. The mechanism is real. The only thing missing is the explanation. And the explanation, it turns out, is not the part that saves lives. She moves along the shore and picks meadowsweet. Tall stems with clusters of tiny cream-colored flowers, sweet and sharp. Meadowsweet also contains salicylates. She is, without knowing it, combining two sources of the same active compound and increasing the dose. She does this because experience has taught her that willow bark alone sometimes is not enough, and that the sweet-smelling flowers from the wet ground make it stronger. Morning. Back at camp, she builds a small fire outside the sick man's shelter, separate from the communal fire. She has noticed, over the years, that illness sometimes moves between people, and keeping the sick apart from the healthy is a habit she practices without having a theory for why it works. 12,000 years from now, they will call this quarantine. She calls it common sense. She heats river stones in the fire until they glow, drops them into a hide-lined pit of water. The water hisses and steams. She adds the willow bark, adds the meadowsweet, lets it steep until the liquid turns amber and the smell, bitter, sharp, green, fills the air around the shelter. Inside, the sick man is conscious but barely. She lifts his head and tips the liquid against his lips. He swallows, grimaces, swallows again. She gives him as much as he will take, then lowers his head and places a strip of wet hide across his forehead. Cool water from the lake, wrung out, laid across the heat. Now she waits. This is the part no one talks about when they talk about ancient medicine. Not the herbs, the waiting. Sitting beside someone who may die, watching their breathing, checking their temperature with the back of your hand every few minutes. Not knowing if what you did will work. Knowing that if it does not, there is nothing else to try. She sits. She watches. She waits. An hour passes. She gives him more. He resists, the taste, but she holds the vessel steady with the patience of someone who has done this many times and knows that the alternative to patience is panic, and panic has never helped anyone. Another hour. She checks again. Cooler. Not much, but cooler. The breathing has slowed, not the dangerous slow of someone fading, but the steady slow of someone whose body has stopped fighting at full intensity. The fever is not broken, but it is bending. She allows herself a breath she did not realize she was holding. Midday. She goes to see the baby. The baby was born 6 days ago, a young woman's first child. The birth went well, but the baby is not feeding properly. It latches, sucks for a moment, then pulls away and cries. A thin, reedy cry that worries the healer more than the fever does. The fever she can fight. This she is less sure about. She examines the baby in the light outside the shelter, her hands practiced and soft. She checks the mouth, running a fingertip along the inside of the lips, the gums, the palate. She finds it almost immediately. A thin membrane under the tongue, too tight, pulling it down when the baby tries to latch. It can suck but cannot seal. The milk escapes, the effort exhausts him, and he gives up in frustration. She has seen this before. She knows what to do. She takes out a flint blade, a small, thin flake, knapped fresh that morning, its edge sharper than any metal the world will produce for another 8,000 years. She holds the baby firmly, tilts its head back, lifts the tongue with one finger. One cut. Quick. Precise. The membrane parts. A drop of blood, not much. The baby screams. The mother flinches. The healer places the baby immediately to the breast. It latches. It seals. It feeds. Properly. Fully. For the first time in 6 days. The sound of swallowing rhythmic and steady and unmistakable. The mother's face does something the healer has seen before. The collapse of a fear she did not know she was carrying until it left. This procedure, the release of a tongue tie, will be described in medical textbooks thousands of years from now. Pediatricians will perform it with sterile scissors in fluorescent-lit clinics. It will have a Latin name. It will require a referral. This woman just did it with a flint blade, her fingertip, and 30 seconds. In the afternoon, she goes to the forest. Not for medicine this time, for teaching. Her 7-year-old walks beside her with a small basket, watching everything, asking the questions 7-year-olds ask, which are often better questions than anyone else's. The healer teaches the way everyone in this band teaches, by doing, by naming, by letting the child touch and taste and smell. This root, you can eat it raw, but it tastes better baked. This one, never eat it. The leaves look like the ones you can eat, but the stem is square instead of round, and it will make you vomit until there is nothing left. This bark, for fever. This moss, for wounds. Pack it tight. It stops the bleeding and keeps the dirt out. The child does not know she is learning a pharmacopoeia covering hundreds of species, their preparation, their dosages, their dangers, their seasons. She thinks she is going for a walk with her mother. She is. She is also receiving an education that no university in the modern world offers in anything like this depth. You cannot learn a forest from a textbook. You have to walk through it, season after season, with someone who already knows. They return to camp with wild garlic, sorrel, burdock root, water lily rhizomes dug from the lake shallows with a digging stick. The 7-year-old carries her basket importantly. She has learned 3 new plants today. She will remember them for life. Evening. The sick man wakes at dusk. He sits up on his own, the first time in a day and a half. His face is drawn, his eyes still heavy, but the fever has broken. She can feel it when she touches his forehead, human warm. The kind of warm that means the body has won its fight and is now just tired. She gives him broth, thick with fat and marrow and the minerals his body has been burning through. He drinks it slowly. He does not thank her, not because he is ungrateful, but because thanking someone for doing what everyone does is as foreign as refusing to help. She is the healer. This is what the healer does. He is the hunter. Tomorrow or the day after, he will bring meat. The system does not operate on debt. It operates on the understanding that everyone's survival depends on everyone else's skill. Night. At the evening fire, the camp is louder than last night. The relief is audible, in the laughter of the children, the way people sit closer to each other. One of them was sick, and now he is not. It changes the temperature of the whole group. The baby feeds again at his mother's breast. The thin cry is gone. The mother catches the healer's eye across the fire and holds it for a moment. Just a moment. And whatever passes between them does not need language. The shaman moves around the fire in a slow, deliberate pattern, wearing his red deer skull headdress, giving thanks for the hunter's recovery. The healer does not consider herself separate from him. They are doing different parts of the same work. He knows the spirits, she knows the plants. Between them, they cover the territory. Later, alone in her shelter, she stares at the birch poles converging above her, the faint glow of embers through the smoke hole. She is exhausted. Not the physical exhaustion of the hunt, something different. The exhaustion of carrying responsibility for lives that are not your own. The weight of knowing that the margin between life and death is often one plant, one decision, 1 hour. Her husband died because a wound went bad. She knew which plants to use. She used them. It was not enough. This is the thing she carries that no one else in the camp sees. The knowledge that her knowledge has limits, and that those limits are where people die. Today was a good day. Tomorrow might not be. She thinks about her daughter walking beside her in the forest, pointing at plants, asking questions. The child does not yet know that what she is learning will one day be the thing that stands between someone and the dark. She does not yet know the weight of it, but she will. These women have always passed it on, mother to daughter, hand to hand, plant by plant, across a span of time so long the knowledge itself is older than language. The first woman who chewed willow bark and noticed the pain faded had no name for what she found, but she remembered it, and she told someone, and that someone told someone. And 12,000 years later, the healer kneeling by the lake in the early morning light, stripping bark from the youngest branches, stands at the end of a chain so long the beginning of it disappears into the dark. She sleeps. Outside, the lake is still. The stars turn slowly over the water. The baby sleeps at his mother's breast. The sick man breathes evenly in the next shelter. Tomorrow comes whether you are ready for it or not. She was not a doctor. She had no title, no training in any formal sense, no written record of her methods. But she practiced real, effective, empirically tested medicine, thousands of years before the first written prescription. The willow bark she boiled this morning contains the same active compound as the aspirin in your bathroom cabinet. The tongue tie she released with a flint blade is the same procedure performed in clinics today. The quarantine instinct, keeping the sick apart from the healthy, would not be formalized in Western medicine until the 14th century. She was doing it in 10,000 BC because she paid attention to the world and remembered what she saw and told her daughter. In the world we imagine, the old man is the first to die. That is the story the movies tell. When food runs short, when the winter bites, when the band has to move fast and far, the old and the weak get left behind, abandoned at the edge of a frozen forest, a burden the group cannot afford to carry. Cold, practical, brutal. That is how we picture the Stone Age. It is almost entirely wrong. In a camp at the edge of a lake in what will one day be called Yorkshire, there is a man who is roughly 55 years old. He cannot run. He cannot draw a hunting bow the way he could 30 years ago. His knees ache when the weather turns, his eyes have softened, and on a cold morning, it takes him a long moment to stand. By every measure of muscle and speed, he is the least useful person in the band. He is also the most important person in the band. And before this day is over, the entire group is going to depend on something only he possesses. Not strength, not speed, memory. This is day 3 of a week in the Stone Age, and today we follow the elder. Let's step back 12,000 years. Before dawn, the old man wakes before the others, the way he always has. Sleep does not hold him the way it held him when he was young. He lies in the dark of his shelter, listening to the band breathe around him. 40 people in a cluster of hide and birch dwellings, on a wooden platform built out over the marshy edge of the lake. He knows every sound. The cough of the woman 3 shelters down, the shift and settle of the dogs by the embers, the particular silence of the young hunter who came back 2 days ago with his first solo kill and has been walking 3 inches taller ever since. He smiles at that one in the dark. He remembers his own first kill. He remembers it better than he remembers yesterday, which is the strange trick of an old mind, that the deep past grows sharper as the recent days go soft. He sits up slowly. This is the part the young ones do not see, because he makes sure they do not. The careful test of the knees before he trusts them with his weight. The weight while the stiffness in his back loosens enough to let him rise. He has learned to do this in private, in the dark, so that when the camp wakes he is already up, already moving, already the elder rather than the old man. There is a difference between those two words, and he has spent the last 10 years making sure the band only ever sees the first one. He pulls his cloak around his shoulders, red deer hide, worn soft as river clay, patched at the shoulder where he wore it through years ago. He steps out onto the platform. The timbers are cold and slick under his bare feet, but he knows every board, every gap, every place where the wood has split. He helped lay some of these timbers. He was a young man then, splitting birch with stone axes, hauling the trunks down to the water. Most of the people who built this platform with him are dead now. He is one of the last who remembers the lake before the platform existed. The water is black and still. Mist sits on it like a second skin. Somewhere out in the reeds a bird calls, and he knows the bird, and he knows that its call at this hour means the weather will hold. And he files that away the way he files everything away, without effort, the way other people breathe. This is what he is. Not a hunter anymore, not a builder anymore, a library. The only library these people have, and the only one they will have for another 9,000 years, until someone in a faraway river valley presses marks into wet clay, and the human race learns, for the first time, how to remember without a living mind to hold it. Until then, knowledge lives in people, and when a person like him dies, a library burns. Dawn. The camp wakes around him, and the trouble arrives with the light. It comes in the shape of two young hunters, returning early and empty-handed from the flint store, and that should not happen. The band keeps a working supply of flint, nodules and prepared cores, struck down into the blades and microliths that tip every arrow, every spear, every knife in the camp. Flint is not a luxury here. It is the edge on which the whole of life is balanced. No flint, no points. No points, no hunting. No hunting, in the slow turning of the seasons, no band. And the supply is almost gone. The elder listens while the young men explain. They thought there was more. There was more last autumn. But a winter of napping and breakage, and the ordinary daily wear of 40 people, has eaten through it faster than anyone tracked. Because tracking it was not any one person's task. The good cores are used up. What is left is small, flawed, shot through with frost cracks that shatter the moment a blade is struck from them. There is a low, uneasy murmur around the morning fire. The young hunter from day one is there, his dog at his heel. The healer is there, listening, her 7-year-old daughter leaning against her leg. Nobody panics. These are not people who panic. But everyone has done the arithmetic, and the arithmetic is bad. And then, one by one, without anyone saying his name aloud, the faces at the fire turn toward the old man. Because there is a question in the air, and he is the only one who can answer it. Where does the flint come from? Not the worked flint, the raw flint, the source. Nobody currently sitting at this fire has ever walked to it. The band has been living off a stockpile carried back years ago, replenished by trade and by the occasional journey. Journeys led, every time, by men who are now dead. The young hunters know the camp, the lake, the forest, the hunting grounds. They do not know the way to the stone. He does. He remembers it the way he remembers his first kill. A place 3 days' walk to the north and east, where the land rises and the soft white rock breaks the surface, and flint lies loose in the stream beds in pieces the size of a man's fist. Grey-black, glass smooth on the fracture, the best stone for 100 miles. He went there 4 times in his life. The last time, his knees already aching, more than 15 years ago. He remembers the river crossings. He remembers the place you turn east at the split rock that looks like a sleeping boar. He remembers the long ridge where you can see the smoke of another band's fires, and the understanding, passed mouth to mouth across generations, that you raise an open hand on that ridge and you do not take more stone than you can carry. All of it is in his head. None of it is anywhere else. Morning. So they come to him, not as a burden they tolerate, as the only door to the thing they need. The young hunters cannot simply be told, 3 days north and east, and sent on their way. A direction is not a route. Between this camp and that streambed, there are rivers that can only be crossed in certain places, marshes that will swallow a man who steps wrong, a forest where every birch looks like every other birch until you know the shape of the land beneath them. People die on journeys like this. People have died on journeys like this. He can name them. And as the morning goes on, he does. He cannot make the walk himself. He knows it, and they know it. 3 days each way, hard ground, river crossings. His body will not carry him there and back. And a man who slows the group is a danger to the group. This is the quiet grief sitting underneath the whole day. The map is perfect, and the legs are gone. So he does the only thing left to him. He takes the map out of his head and puts it into theirs. He gathers the 2 young hunters who will go, and after a moment's thought, the young hunter from day 1, because the boy is sharp and his dog is good, and a 3rd pair of eyes on a journey like this can be the difference between 4 men coming home and 3. The elder sits them down on the platform in the morning light, and he begins to build the route in the only medium he has, spoken words, repeated until they stick. He does not just describe the way, he makes them say it back. He tells them the first landmark, the twin oaks where the deer trail forks, and he makes each of them repeat it. Then the first river, and the only safe crossing, where the water runs wide and shallow over gravel, and you can see the bottom. Never cross where it runs narrow and dark and fast, no matter how much shorter it looks, because narrow and dark means deep. Say it back. They say it back. Then the marsh, and the line of solid ground through it, marked by a stand of 3 dead pines standing pale against the green. Say it back. This is a technology. We do not think of it as one, because it has no moving parts and leaves nothing behind for an archaeologist to dig up. But the oral map, the disciplined, structured, tested by repetition transmission of a route through a landscape, is one of the oldest and most powerful tools the human species ever built. It is how people crossed continents. It is how the knowledge of waterholes and river crossings and seasonal grounds was carried across thousands of years and thousands of miles, with no ink, no paper, no marks of any kind. It lived in the rhythm of words said aloud and said again, in the songs and the lists, and the repeated phrases that an old man pours into a young one until they cannot be forgotten. He is not telling them a story. He is uploading a map. The hardware is memory. The method is repetition. And the old man is very, very good at it, because he has been the keeper of this kind of knowledge his whole life. And because somewhere underneath the lesson, he knows exactly what is at stake. Midday. They break at midday, and the lesson softens into something else. The 4-year-old, the healer's youngest, has wandered over and planted himself in front of the old man, the way small children do, with the total fearlessness of someone who has never once been turned away. And the elder, who an hour ago was a stern keeper of river crossings, becomes something different. He tells the child a story. It is the story of the giants. He tells it the way it was told to him, when he was a boy this size, by an old man at a fire much like this one. Long ago, he says, longer ago than your mother, longer ago than your mother's mother, longer ago than anyone, the land was colder, white and hard and open, and across it walked animals so large that the ground shook when they moved. Beasts with noses like rivers and teeth like tree trunks, covered in hair that hung to the ground. the biggest creatures the world has ever known. And the people then hunted them, and lived in houses built from their bones, and wore their skins, and were never, ever cold in the way we understand cold. The 4-year-old's eyes are enormous. Here is the thing the child cannot know, and the old man only half knows. The story is true. The mammoths were real. The bone houses were real. Great domed dwellings framed from mammoth tusks and skulls, built across the cold open steppe of the last ice age. But by 10,000 BC, the mammoths are already gone from this corner of the world. The elder has never seen one. His grandfather never saw one. The giants live now only where everything important to these people lives, in the spoken word, in the story passed down the chain of voices, growing a little more wondrous with each telling, but never quite losing the hard kernel of truth at its center. This is what he protects. Not just the route to the flint, the route to everything. The winter the lake froze so deep the fish died, and the band nearly starved, and what they ate to survive it. The summer the deer changed their path, and the people who refused to move, and the people who moved and lived. The giants of the cold time. All of it, held in one aging head, and poured, a story at a time, a river crossing at a time, into the heads that will outlive him. The child does not know he is being handed the deepest inheritance these people have. He thinks he is hearing about big, hairy animals. He is. He is also being made into the next link in a chain that reaches back past the edge of memory itself. Afternoon. In the afternoon, the old man's body reminds him of its terms. He has been sitting too long. When he tries to rise, the knees lock and the pain flares white. And for a moment, just a moment, hidden as always, he has to grip the platform timber and breathe through it. The young hunter from day one sees, says nothing, quietly puts a hand under the old man's arm, not as charity, but the way you steady a thing of value, and the elder lets him, which is its own small surrender. This is the bargain of his age, and he made his peace with it long ago. The body that once ran down deer now negotiates with a wooden platform. But here is what the world that abandons its old people never understands. The band keeps him not out of sentiment, and not only out of love, though there is love. They keep him because keeping him is the single most rational thing a band like this can do. A group with no written language has exactly one way to store the hard-won knowledge of generations, in the minds of the people who lived it. Lose the old man, and you do not lose a slow walker. You lose the only copy of the route to the flint, the only copy of what to eat in the killing winter, the only copy of which mushroom stops the heart, and which valley floods in spring, and where, 30 years ago, the band buried its dead. An old man is a library, and a band that lets its library die of neglect is a band that has chosen, without knowing it, to make every old mistake again from scratch. So through the long afternoon, he keeps teaching. He drills the route a third time, then a fourth, adding the return journey now, which is not simply the outbound journey reversed. The river you crossed with the morning sun on your right must be crossed with it on your left. And a man who does not understand that can walk 3 days in the wrong direction and never see his camp again. He makes them recite the whole thing back, start to finish, both ways, until the words come without hesitation, until the map lives in 3 young heads as surely as it lives in his one old one. When the youngest of them finally says the entire route back, flawless, unhesitating, every river, every fork, every dead pine and split rock, the old man closes his eyes for a moment. The library has been copied. Whatever happens to him now, the way to the stone will not die with him. Evening. At the evening fire, the band does for the old man what the old man has spent his life doing for the band. It remembers him out loud. The 3 who will leave at first light eat well. The healer has seen to that. Broth thick with marrow, the best of the dried fish. There is a seriousness under the talk, because everyone understands what tomorrow's journey is for, and what it will cost if it fails. But there is warmth too, and most of the warmth flows toward the old man, who sits closest to the fire because the fire is kinder to old bones, and who is, tonight, unmistakably the center of the camp. The shaman is there, the red deer skull headdress on his brow, the antlers throwing branched shadows up the shelter walls. He moves through the firelight and makes the low sound that is half voice and half something older. And tonight, the sound is for the travelers, for safe crossings, for the open hand on the ridge, for stone enough and a road home. The old man watches him and feels, as he always feels, the closeness of their two crafts. The shaman keeps the map of the spirit world. The elder keeps the map of this one. Between them, the band knows where it stands in both. When the fire is low, the young hunter from day one sits beside the old man, the boy who will walk north in the morning with the elder's map in his head and his dog at his heel. He does not say much, neither does the old man. But before he rises to sleep, the boy asks the question the young always eventually ask. How do you carry all of it? All the roots and the winters and the giants, and never let any of it fall? The old man looks at the fire for a while. You do not carry it, he says at last. You hand it on. A thing you carry you can drop. A thing you hand on cannot be dropped, because it is no longer only in you. He looks at the boy. That is what tomorrow is. I am handing you the road so that the road cannot die. Night. The camp sleeps. The travelers sleep hardest because they will need it. And the old man lies awake in the dark, as he always does, listening to the band breathe. He is thinking about the journey he cannot make. There was a time he would have led it himself, would have been the first across every river, the one who turned east at the Sleeping Boar Rock without breaking stride. That man is gone. Tonight, 3 young men hold the road that used to live in his legs, and in the morning they will walk it without him, and that is exactly as it should be, and it still sits in his chest like a stone. This is the part of growing old that no one warns you about, not the aching knees, not the soft eyes, but the slow handing away of everything you used to be, piece by piece, to people who will carry it further than you ever can. He has been doing it for years. The route today, the giants to a 4-year-old this morning. His whole life lately has become the act of pouring himself into other vessels before the one he was born with finally cracks. And here is the quiet triumph underneath the grief, the thing the movies with their abandoned old men never reach. It is working. The boy can say the route back without a flaw. The 4-year-old will tell the giant's story to a child of his own one day, 50 years from now, by a fire this old man will never see. Nothing he knows is going to be lost. He has spent his life making sure of it. He thinks of the men who taught him the road, all of them dead, and how they are not entirely gone, how a piece of each of them walked north this very day, in his words, in his memory. He is part of a chain that has no visible beginning, and if these people keep doing what they have always done, no end he needs to fear. The library does not burn, it copies itself, mind to mind, voice to voice, down the long, dark corridor of years. Outside, the lake is still. The stars wheel slowly over the black water, the same stars his grandfather named for him, the same names he has spoken to children who will speak them again. The dog from day one lies by the embers, ears twitching at the night. The travelers breathe slow and deep, 3 young men with an old man's map folded safe inside their skulls. In the morning, they will walk north, and the road will go with them because he gave it away. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow comes whether you are ready for it or not. So that was day 3 in the Stone Age, and the man the movies told us would be the first to be abandoned, who turns out to be the last person any sane band would ever leave behind. He could not run. He could not hunt. He could barely cross his own camp on a cold morning without his knees betraying him. And he was, without contest, the most valuable person in a community of 40 people. Because in a world with no writing, the old are not a burden. They are the only memory the group has. The route to the flint, the food that beats the killing winter, the giants of the Ice Age, the names of the stars and the dead, all of it lived in one aging head, and his whole purpose, in the last chapter of his life, was to copy it into younger ones before the end. This was real. Mesolithic bands did travel long distances to specific high-quality flint sources, and that stone moved across the landscape in ways archaeologists can still trace today. The mammoth bone houses were real, built across the Ice Age steppe, though the mammoths themselves were already gone from Britain by 10,000 BC, which is exactly why, in this story, they survive only as the grandfather's tale. And the respect for elders is not a romantic invention. In societies that store their knowledge in living memory, the oldest members are the archive, the map, and the insurance policy all at once. Far from being abandoned, they were protected, because everyone understood, without ever needing to say it, that when an old person dies, a library burns. 3 young men stand on a riverbank they have never seen before, and the water in front of them is wrong. It runs narrow here, and dark and fast, and an old man's voice is in the back of one of their heads, repeating a rule said over and over until it could not be forgotten. Never cross where it runs narrow and dark and fast, no matter how much shorter it looks, because narrow and dark means deep. They have been walking since before dawn. The flint they came for is still 2 days north, and the only map they have is the one an old man poured into their heads 3 nights ago, word by word, river by river, because his legs could no longer make this walk, and someone had to. This is day 4 of A Week in the Stone Age, and today we leave the camp behind and walk north with the travelers. Let's step back 12,000 years. Before dawn, they left the lake while the camp still slept, 3 of them. 2 seasoned hunters in their 20s, and a younger one, 17. The boy who made his first solo kill 4 days ago, and has not stopped feeling the weight and pride of it since. He walks at the back, where the youngest always walks, and his dog trots at his heel, the tan-grey animal with the pointed ears that goes where he goes. The elder chose him for this. Sharp eyes, the old man said, and a good dog is worth a 4th man. The reason for the journey is simple and serious. The camp is nearly out of flint. No flint means no new blades, no arrow points, no knives, and in the slow arithmetic of these people, no tools eventually means no food. The good stone does not exist anywhere near the lake. It lies 3 days north and east, in the stream beds where the white rock breaks the surface. Nobody alive at the camp had ever walked there. Only the elder remembered the way, and the elder could no longer go. So he did the next best thing. He spent a full day turning 3 young men into a living copy of the route. And that is the strange truth of this journey. The most important thing these travelers carry is not in their packs. It is not the dried fish, or the water skins, or the spare bowstrings, or the hide rolls they will sleep in. It is the sequence of words running in their heads, the twin oaks, the wide gravel crossing, the 3 dead pines, the split rock like a sleeping boar, the ridge where another band's smoke rises. A map made of nothing but memory and repetition, carried north in 3 skulls. If they remember it right, they live, and the band lives. If they get it wrong, the forest is very large and very old, and does not care. Dawn. The first landmark comes exactly where the old man said it would. 2 oaks, grown close, where the deer trail forks. The 17-year-old recognizes it with a jolt that is almost physical. The thing in his head and the thing in the world lining up, matching, clicking into place. He has never been here in his life, and yet he knew it was coming, knew to look for 2 trunks and a fork in the path. Because 3 nights ago by the fire, An old man made him say it back until it stuck. This is the moment the journey stops being frightening and starts being possible. The map works. The old man's memory, carried in words across a lifetime and handed over in a single evening, is real and accurate, and out here in the world where it counts. The young hunter feels something he does not have a word for, a kind of trust in the dead and the old, in the long chain of people who walked this before him and bothered to remember. They take the left fork, the way the elder said. The dog ranges ahead and comes back. The forest is loud with morning birds, and for a while the walking is good. Morning. Then they reach the river, and the river is the first real test. It is the wide crossing the old man warned them to find. But rivers move. A wet season can shift a ford, drown a gravel bank, turn a safe crossing into a drowning. The two older hunters stand on the bank and read the water the way the healer reads a fever, the way the elder reads a memory, carefully, professionally, with their lives riding on getting it right. Wide, shallow. You can see the bottom, pale gravel under moving water, the surface broken and bright. That is the elder's rule, and the river obeys it here. Not far downstream the channel narrows, and the water goes dark and smooth and quiet. And the smooth quiet is the lie. That is where it is deep enough to take a grown man off his feet and roll him under with a pack on his back. They do not cross there. They cross here, where it is ugly and broad and safe, linking arms, the dog swimming alongside, the cold gripping their legs to the thigh. They come out the far side wet and breathing hard and entirely alive. The map held. This is what an oral map really is, and why it mattered enough for an old man to spend his last useful strength on it. It is not poetry. It is a survival technology with no room for error, water you can cross and water that kills, ground that holds and ground that swallows, encoded in repeatable words and passed mind to mind because there was no other way to store it. These people had no paper. They had each other's memories. And on a riverbank 2 days from home, that turns out to be enough. Midday. They eat on the move, dried fish, a handful of hazelnuts, water from a clean stream the elder also told them about. And as they walk, the older hunters do the thing the elder did to them. They make the boys say the rest of the route back. What comes after the marsh? The 3 dead pines. And after the pines, the land rises and you turn east at the split rock that looks like a sleeping boar. And after the boar, the long ridge. And on the ridge, you raise an open hand and you do not take more stone than you can carry. He has it, all of it. And in making him recite it, the 2 older men are not just checking him, they are doing what their people have always done, what keeps a band alive across generations. Never let knowledge live in only one head. The elder taught 3 of them, not 1, for exactly this reason. If one man falls on this journey, the map does not fall with him. Redundancy, built by hand, out of repetition. The most sophisticated backup system in the world, and it runs on nothing but the human voice. The marsh comes in the afternoon light, just as promised. Flat green ground that looks walkable and is not. Ground that has swallowed people whole. And there, pale against the green, 3 dead pines, marking the only line of solid footing through it. They cross slow, single file, testing each step, the dog whining and picking its own careful way. On the far side, the land begins at last to rise. Afternoon. They turn east at the sleeping boar. It is uncanny, a hump of grey rock split by a single deep crack. And from the right angle, in the right light, it really does look like a great boar lying down with its spine fissured open. The elder saw this rock more than 15 years ago and described it so exactly that 3 young men recognize it on sight. The old man's eyes are failing now, but the thing he saw a decade and a half ago is still perfectly preserved. Out here, in the only place it was ever written down, another person's memory. And then they climb the ridge. And on the ridge, everything changes, because there is smoke. Far off, down the long slope on the other side, thin grey columns rise into the evening air. Cooking fires. Another band, strangers, living near the very streambeds the travelers have walked 3 days to reach. The flint source is not empty wilderness. It belongs, in the loose way these things belong, to people who are already here. This is the most dangerous moment of the journey, and it has nothing to do with rivers or marshes. Two groups of human beings who do not know each other, meeting over a scarce and valuable resource. In the wrong story, this is where it turns to blood. But the elder gave them more than a route. He gave them the law, the unwritten understanding, passed mouth to mouth across generations and bands, of what you do on this ridge. You raise an open hand. You show you carry no drawn weapon. You take only what you can carry and no more. You do not take the place of another band's children. The travelers stop on the ridge in plain sight, where the smoke makers can see them. And the eldest of the three lifts his open hand against the evening sky and holds it there and waits. Evening. For a long moment, nothing. Then, far below, a figure steps out from the tree line near the fires and raises an open hand in return. That is all it is. No words exchanged across that distance, none needed. Two hands, open, against the sky. A protocol older than any language either band speaks, understood by both because both inherited it the same way the travelers inherited the route, handed down, voice to voice, across more generations than anyone can count. We see you. We are not armed. There is enough. This is how human beings, with no shared tongue and every reason to fear each other, chose cooperation over killing, 12,000 years before anyone wrote a treaty. The travelers make their camp on the near side, apart but visible, the courteous distance. They light a small fire, they eat, and in the last of the light they go down to the stream bed, and they find it, exactly what the old man promised, loose in the gravel, grey-black, glass smooth on the fracture. Flint. The best stone for 100 miles, lying in the open like fruit on the ground. The 17-year-old picks up a nodule the size of his fist and turns it over in his hands. He has used flint his whole life. Every blade, every arrow point that fed him came off stone like this. But he has never seen it at the source, never held it raw, straight from the earth that made it. Somewhere 2 days south, an old man who will never stand here again described this exact place from memory so that this exact moment could happen. The boy does not have the words for what he feels, but he understands, holding the cold stone in the firelight, that he is standing inside another man's memory and that it is real, and that one day it will be his job to carry it for someone else. Night. They sleep in shifts, the way you do in strange country, one man and the dog awake while the others rest. The 17-year-old takes the deep middle of the night. He sits by the low fire with his dog's head heavy on his knee, the other band's fires glowing faint and friendly across the valley, and he runs the route backwards in his head, the way home. The ridge, the boar, the pines, the marsh, the crossing, the oaks, the lake. He says it silently, all of it, both directions, and finds it whole. He thinks about the old man. 3 nights ago he had thought of the elder, if he was honest, as someone the band carried, fed, sheltered, kept warm, given the best place at the fire out of kindness. He does not think that anymore. He has crossed 3 days of country that would have killed him, on nothing but the old man's words, and he understands now that the elder was never being carried. The elder was carrying them, all of them, the whole band, every day, in a head full of rivers and rocks and rules, waiting for the day someone would need it. In the morning, they will load the flint and turn south. 3 young men with full packs and a map that has not failed them once. They will cross back over the rivers in reverse, the sun on the other shoulder, exactly as the elder said. They will bring the stone home, and the band will make blades and tip arrows and eat and live, because an old man remembered, and 3 young men listened, and a stranger on a far ridge raised an open hand. The fire burns low, the dog sleeps. Across the valley, the other band's fires burn too, and somewhere over there, a person the travelers will never meet is keeping the same kind of watch, under the same wheeling stars. Tomorrow they walk home. Tomorrow comes whether you are ready for it or not. So that was day 4 in the Stone Age. 3 young men, a dog, and a map made entirely of memory, walking into country none of them had ever seen. They survived rivers that drown the careless, and marshes that swallow the unwary. Not because they were strong or lucky, but because an old man had walked it first and bothered to remember, and because they listened well enough to carry his memory in their own heads. And when they met strangers over the one thing both bands needed, they did not fight. They raised an open hand, and the strangers raised one back. That gesture, and the restraint behind it, is as much a Stone Age technology as the bow or the flint blade. Maybe more. This was real. Mesolithic people did travel long distances to specific, high-quality flint sources, and archaeologists can still trace that stone moving across the ancient landscape, sometimes over 100 miles from where it came out of the ground. Different bands shared territory and resources, and the archaeological record shows exchange and contact rather than constant war. And the knowledge that made such journeys survivable, the rivers, the crossings, the landmarks, the etiquette of meeting strangers, lived nowhere but in human memory, carried by exactly the kind of elder we followed yesterday, and exactly the kind of young traveler we followed today. You already know this woman. 3 days ago, you watched her break a fever with willow bark. You watched her open a newborn's tongue with a flint blade and 30 seconds of nerve. You watched her sit beside a dying man and hold his hand in the dark because there was nothing else to give. She is the healer. She is the one who keeps 40 people alive. Today, the person she cannot save is her own son. While the travelers were walking north for Flint, something happened at the lake. And it happened to the one person in this camp we thought was untouchable. The woman who knows every plant, every remedy, every trick for cheating death. Because knowledge, it turns out, is not the same as control. And a mother who can heal the whole band is still just a mother when it is her own child by the water. This is day 5 of a week in the Stone Age, and today we follow the healer, not as a healer, but as a mother. Let's step back 12,000 years. Before dawn, she wakes to a cough she does not like. It is the 4-year-old, her youngest. He has been snuffling for 2 days. Nothing alarming, the ordinary running nose of a small child in a cold season. But this morning the cough has changed. It comes from deeper in his chest, and there is a faint, tight whistle underneath it that she feels in her own body before she has finished waking up. She lies still for a moment in the grey dark, the boy hot against her side, her 7-year-old daughter asleep on the other side. She does the thing she has done 10,000 times for other people's children, and now does for her own. She listens. The rhythm of his breathing, the catch at the top of each breath, the little pull of effort where there should be none. She has heard this before, in other children. Some of them lived, some of them did not. This is the part of her life that no one at the fire ever sees. To the band, she is certainty itself, the one who knows, the one who acts, the one whose hands do not shake. But in the dark, before the camp wakes, she is a woman doing sums she wishes she did not know how to do. She lost her husband 2 winters ago to a wound that turned bad. She knew the plants, she used them. It was not enough. And the thing she has never said aloud to anyone is that her knowledge, the thing that defines her, has a flaw under it made of the people it could not save. She gets up before the light. This child is not going to be one of them. not if she can help it. Dawn. The camp is thinner than usual, and she feels the gap. The three travelers are 2 days north by now, walking for Flint, and one of them is the young hunter, the boy with the good dog. Their absence changes the shape of the camp. Fewer hands, fewer eyes. The people who are left lean a little more on each other, and a little more on her, because when the strong young men are away, the healer is the one everyone quietly orients around. She goes to the lake in the early light, the way she always does. But today her mind is split. Half of it is on the plants. The other half is on a 4-year-old back at the shelter, coughing. She gathers what she needs for a tight chest: coltsfoot, the yellow flowers that come before the leaves, the inner bark of the wild cherry, thyme from the dry ground, sharp and warming. She knows how to steam a child over hot herb water, how to prop him upright so the chest drains, how to keep the airway open through a long night. She has done it for others. She will do it for him. She fills her pouch, working fast, and turns back toward the camp. And this is the moment the day turns. Because when she gets back, the shelter is empty. Morning. The 7-year-old is there, wide-eyed. The 4-year-old is not. Her daughter explains in a rush. He woke. He wanted his mother. He saw her down by the water and went after her. He is fine. He just went to find you. The word fine hangs in the air and means nothing, because the healer is already moving, already scanning, already running the geometry of a small, sick child and a very large lake in her head. The lake. The one thing in this world that gives these people everything. Fish, reeds, drinking water, the willows, the whole pharmacy of the shore, and the one thing that takes children. Every parent in this camp carries the same low, permanent fear, buried under daily life, and it is this. The water is always right there, and a 4-year-old does not understand what it can do. She does not scream his name. Screaming wastes breath and tells you nothing. She reads the ground, and there, in the soft mud at the water's edge, small footprints, leading toward the reeds at the southern curve, where the shore drops off, toward the deep. She runs. The reeds are tall and close, and full of the sounds of birds, and for a stretch of time she will never forget she cannot see him, cannot hear him, cannot find any sign but the small prints pressing on through the mud toward the water. Her whole life is knowledge, of plants, of bodies, of remedies, and none of it is any use to her here. Here there is only a mother and a shoreline, and the worst thing she can imagine, one step ahead of her in the reeds. And then she hears it. Not a scream, worse and better at once, a cough. That deep, tight, whistling cough, close, low, by the water. He is at the very edge, sitting in the shallows where the mud is soft, soaked to the chest and shivering and coughing, but up and breathing and alive. He went in after something, a bird or a reflection or nothing at all, and the soft mud held his legs and stopped him going deeper, and the cold shocked the breath out of him, and he sat down in the shallow water and cried until the crying became coughing. She has him out of the water before she has decided to move. Both arms, full strength, hauling him up against her chest, his cold, soaked weight and his hot, fevered head. And for a moment, she just holds him so hard he squirms, her face in his wet hair, saying nothing, feeling the one thing she needed to feel, the small, furious drum of a living heart. Midday. Now the healer takes over from the mother, because the mother alone is not enough. Because he is worse now. The cold water on the fevered chest, the shock, the crying. His breathing has tightened, the whistle sharper, his lips faintly dusky, his small body burning and shivering at once. This is the danger she smelled before dawn, made real and made worse. A child can go from coughing to fighting for air faster than anyone who has not watched it happen would believe. and the travelers are 2 days north, and the nearest anything else is 12,000 years away. So she does what she is. She strips his wet hide off and dries him and wraps him warm. She builds the fire up. She fills a hide-lined pit with water and glowing stones until it steams. And she throws in the coltsfoot and the thyme and the cherry bark. And she makes a tent of hides over the boy and the steam, and she holds him in it, upright against her shoulder, so the warm, wet air can reach down into his tight chest and loosen what is locked there. She talks to him the whole time. Not medicine, just her voice, low and steady. The same voice she uses on grown men who are dying, because she learned long ago that the voice itself is part of the treatment. Panic tightens a chest. Calm opens it. So she stays calm on the outside with everything she has, while inside she counts his breaths and watches his lips and does the sums. The camp gathers close, the way it did around the fever 3 days ago. The sick man's brother, the older women, her own 7-year-old hovering white-faced at the edge. One of them takes the daughter's hand. Another builds the fire higher without being asked. The band contracts around its wounded again, and this time the wounded is the healer's own child, and the healer is inside the circle instead of running it. An hour. The steam. Her voice. The herbs. She checks his lips, less dusky. She counts his breaths, still fast but looser, the whistle softening. The cough, when it comes now, brings things up instead of just tearing at him. That is good. That is the chest unlocking. She allows herself, for the first time since dawn, half a breath of hope. Afternoon. The afternoon is long and slow, and she does not leave his side. He sleeps against her in the warmth, breathing better, not well, but better, and she sits with her back against the shelter pole and lets him, her arm gone numb under his weight and not caring. Her daughter comes and sits against her other side, and the three of them stay like that. The small, warm weight of a family that came within 100 paces of being smaller. And in the long quiet, she thinks the thoughts she never says. She thinks about how the whole band believes she is the one who controls death, the one who knows the plant, cuts the tongue, breaks the fever, holds the line. And how none of them know what she knows. That control is a story she performs so that people do not panic. That the willow bark works, but not always. That she cut the baby's tongue with confidence because she had done it before. But her hands, in the moment, were not certain, only steady. That the difference between the healer and everyone else is not that she is not afraid. It is that she has learned to be afraid and act anyway. She thinks about her husband. She always does in these hours. She thinks that if he had gone into the reeds this morning instead of a soft mud bank stopping a 4-year-old, no plant she owns would have brought him back. And she would have added her own son to the floor beneath her knowledge, the way she added her husband. And she thinks, with a fierceness that surprises her, that today the floor held. Today the mud was soft, and the water was shallow, and the herbs worked, and the boy is breathing against her chest. Not because she controlled it, because she paid attention, and she ran, and she acted, and she was this once, in time. That is all healing ever is, she understands. Not control. Attention, and nerve, and being in time. And sometimes, underneath all of it, luck she will never admit to needing. Evening. By the evening fire, the boy is sitting up. He is wrapped in dry furs on her lap, pale and tired, and crossed the way sick children get when the worst has passed, demanding things and refusing them, which is the most beautiful sound she has heard all day. A cross child is a living child. A child with the energy to complain is a child whose chest has opened. The band is loud tonight, with the particular relief she has heard before, the volume that rises when one of their own was nearly lost and was not. But tonight she is not the calm center dispensing it. Tonight she is on the receiving end. The older women fuss over the boy and over her. Someone presses the best of the food into her hands. Her 7-year-old daughter, who spent the day being brave at the edge of the circle, finally cries now that it is safe to, and the healer holds both children at once and lets her. The shaman comes to the fire in the red deer headdress, the antlers rising into the dark, and he makes the low sound over the boy, thanks or protection, or both. And the healer, who 3 nights ago stood a little apart and thought of herself and the shaman as doing different halves of the same work, tonight simply lets it wash over her son and is grateful. She does not need to know if it works. Today she has been reminded exactly how little any of them controls, and how much they lean on everything at once. The herbs and the fire, and the voices and the spirits, and the soft mud and the shallow water, to keep their children on this side of the dark. Night. The camp sleeps. Both her children sleep against her, the 4-year-old's breathing slow and loose now, the whistle nearly gone, the fever finally breaking under her hand, the way she has felt it break under her hand for other people's children 100 times. She lies awake, because she cannot yet make herself sleep, because some part of her is still standing in the reeds, at the moment before she heard the cough. She knows she will stand there again, in dreams, in quiet moments, for the rest of her life. That is the tax of loving small people in a world with a lake in it. You carry the near misses forever, right alongside the losses. But she also lies awake feeling something steadier underneath the fear. She has spent her whole life being the one others turn to, the keeper of the knowledge that stands between the band and the dark. And today, she was reminded that she is not separate from the people she saves. She is one of them, as breakable as any of them. A mother who got lucky and got there in time. There is no shame in that. There is, in fact, something like peace in it. She is not death's opponent, holding it off by force of will. She is just a person who pays attention, and loves fiercely, and acts, and passes it all on. She thinks of her daughter, 7 years old, who watched everything today. The running, the reeds, the steam, the fear worn as calm. Who is learning, without being taught, the deepest lesson of them all. That you will be afraid, and you act anyway. One day the girl will kneel beside someone in the dark, with shaking hands and a steady voice, and she will not remember being taught this. She will only remember, somewhere too deep for words, the day her mother ran into the reeds and came back carrying her brother. The chain holds. Mother to daughter, fear to nerve, hand to hand. Outside, the lake is still and black and beautiful and dangerous, exactly as it has always been. The stars turn over the water. Somewhere 2 days north, 3 men sleep beside a stream bed full of flint, and one of them has a dog. And in a shelter at the edge of the water, a woman who is not death's master and never was, holds her 2 sleeping children, and at last, lets herself sleep. Tomorrow comes whether you are ready for it or not. So that was day 5 in the Stone Age, the healer, seen from the inside for the first time. Not as the one with the answers, but as a mother in the worst hour a parent can have, discovering that all her knowledge is no armor at all when the child in danger is her own. This is the truth the herbs and the flint blades can hide. These people did not control death. They negotiated with it. A mother in 10,000 BC knew every remedy her world could offer, and still lay awake at night doing the arithmetic of a cough. Because the margin between a living child and a lost one was so thin. A soft mud bank instead of a deep channel, a warm steam instead of a locked chest, being there in time instead of a moment too late. Child mortality in the Mesolithic was brutally high. Behind every one of those numbers was a woman exactly like this one, who knew everything and still could not be sure. And that is why she is the strongest person in this series, not the weakest. Because being certain is easy when you know nothing. It is the ones who know exactly how thin the margin is and run into the reeds anyway who hold a band together. Tomorrow, day 6, the travelers come home. 3 men, a dog, and a full load of flint, walking back into a camp that nearly lost a child while they were gone. And waiting for them is the person the whole week has been quietly building toward. The one who speaks to the spirits, wears the red deer skull, and carries the last kind of knowledge we have not yet followed. Day 6, the Shaman. There is a red deer skull with the antlers still attached, hollowed and worked and pierced, so a man can wear it on his head. It is real. Archaeologists dug it out of the ground in Yorkshire, and it is roughly 11,000 years old, one of the oldest ritual objects ever found in Britain. Somebody made that. Somebody wore it. And for a long time, the polite modern assumption was that whoever wore it was a fraud. A clever man in a costume, exploiting the fears of people too primitive to know better. Firelight and superstition, smoke and nonsense. That assumption is not just unkind, it is wrong. Because the man who wore that skull was doing one of the most important and sophisticated jobs in the entire camp. A job we still need done today, and still struggle to do half as well. This is day 6 of a week in the Stone Age, and today we follow the Shaman. Let's step back 12,000 years. Before dawn, he is awake before the skull. The headdress sits on a low wooden rack at the back of his shelter, the antlers throwing strange branched shadows in the last of the night's embers. He does not sleep in it, does not treat it carelessly, does not touch it without reason. When he is not wearing it, he is just a man, perhaps 45, lean, quiet, with the slightly inward look of someone who spends a great deal of time listening to things other people cannot hear. It is only when he lifts the skull onto his head that he becomes the other thing, the one who crosses over. This morning he is troubled, and he has been since yesterday. While the young men were away in the north, the healer's small son nearly drowned in the reeds. The child lived, but the whole camp felt the cold breath of what almost happened, and the shaman felt it more than anyone, because feeling the mood of the band, catching its fears before they spread, is his work as surely as tracking is the hunter's. A camp that has been frightened does not simply go back to normal. Fear leaves a residue. It sits in people, unspoken, and it sours into short tempers, into blame, into the quiet fracturing of a group that cannot afford to fracture. Someone has to lift it out. That someone is him. And today, with the travelers due home and the camp still raw, he has a great deal to lift. He sits in the dark with the skull and does the first part of his work, the part no one sees. He prepares himself. He steadies his own fear so that he can carry everyone else's. You cannot calm a frightened band if you are frightened. So before the light, alone, he does whatever it is he does, breathing or listening or speaking to the ones who came before, until he is still enough to be of use. Dawn. The camp wakes raw, exactly as he knew it would. You can see it in small things. People are short with each other. The healer is exhausted and quiet, her son pale but recovering at her side. Someone snaps at a child over nothing. The relief of the near miss has curdled overnight into the low irritability of people who came too close to grief and have nowhere to put it. This is the invisible wound the shaman exists to treat. Not a broken leg or a fever, but the sickness of a group's shared mind. He does not call a meeting. These people have no word for meeting and would not need one. He simply begins to move through the camp in the way that signals, to everyone, that the work is beginning. He goes to the healer first. He does not tell her the spirits are angry or offer some fantasy of control. He sits with her. He acknowledges, in the formal language of his role, that something terrible almost happened and did not, and that the almost is a weight, and that the weight is real and allowed to be set down. This is the thing the man in a costume theory completely misses. What the shaman offers is not a lie about how the world works. It is a structure for feelings that would otherwise have no shape. Grief, terror, relief, guilt. These are as dangerous to a band of 40 people as any predator, because they spread, and they isolate, and they turn people against each other. The shaman's job is to take those formless, corrosive things and give them a form, a ritual, a story, a shared act that lets the whole group feel the thing together, and then, crucially, be finished feeling it. He is not a con man. He is the camp's mind, tending itself. Morning, and then, in the middle of the morning, the shape of the day changes, because the travelers come home. They come out of the northern tree line, tired and filthy and triumphant. 3 young men and a dog, packs heavy with grey-black flint. The camp erupts, children run. The near drowning and the raw grief of the morning are, for a moment, swept aside by the sheer relief of the young men walking back into the world alive, with the stone the band needs to survive. The 17-year-old, the hunter, the boy with the dog, finds his footing back in the camp and immediately feels the thing underneath the celebration, the strangeness of return. He left a camp that was whole. He comes back to one that nearly lost a child, that is frayed at the edges, that is both overjoyed to see him and quietly changed in a way he cannot name. He does not have the tools to process this. Almost no one does. The shaman does. That is his craft. Because here is the shaman understands that the young hunter does not yet. A homecoming is not just a happy event. It is a threshold. The travelers have been somewhere the rest of the band has not, across deadly rivers, into another band's territory, to the very source of the stone. They have seen things, done things, been changed by things. And when people cross thresholds like that, they need to be brought back across properly, welcomed back into the group, or they remain, subtly, half outside it. Every human culture that will ever exist marks these moments. Homecomings, comings of age, deaths, births, with ritual. Because the alternative is people drifting loose from each other. The shaman is the keeper of the thresholds. And tonight, he has several to tend at once. Midday. So he begins to prepare, and midday finds him doing the least mystical thing imaginable. Careful, practical work. He inspects the fire pit. He gathers the specific plants he will use, not for medicine now, but for smoke, for scent, for the particular haze that changes the feeling of a space. He rehearses, quietly, the sounds and the movements. Ritual that looks spontaneous and otherworldly is in fact practiced. The shaman is a craftsman, and his materials are attention, rhythm, firelight, and sound. He knows exactly how a low repeated tone loosens something in the chest. He knows how firelight and shadow and a slow circling figure pull a group of exhausted people out of their separate heads and into one shared experience. He has learned these things the way the flint knapper learned to read stone, by doing them over a lifetime and watching what works. None of this is fake. This is the crucial point. The knowledge that a particular rhythm calms a frightened group, that shared movement bonds people, that giving grief a container lets it pass. This is real knowledge about real human minds, discovered by trial and error across thousands of years, long before anyone had a word for any of it. The shaman is running, in effect, the camp's psychology, and its funeral rites, and its therapy, and its theatre, all at once, with a deer skull and a fire. We have since split that one job into a dozen professions, and still do not do it as completely as a single figure did around a fire 12,000 years ago. As he works, the 17-year-old watches him from a distance. The boy has known the shaman his whole life, and, like everyone, has always felt a flicker of fear around him, the sense of a man standing with one foot in another world. But today, having crossed his own threshold and come back subtly wrong-footed, The boy watches the preparations differently. He is beginning to understand that whatever the shaman does tonight, it is going to be for him too, for all of them. Afternoon. In the afternoon, the shaman does the quiet, individual work that the firelit ritual will later complete. He goes to the 4-year-old, the boy who nearly drowned, and he does something for the child that the healer, for all her skill, could not. The healer treated the boy's chest. The shaman treats the boy's fear. Because a child who nearly drowned now carries the water inside him, a terror that could keep him from the lake that feeds the whole band. So the shaman takes the raw, shapeless fear and gives it a story the child can hold. Not that the lake is safe, it is not, and he will not lie. But that the boy is watched over, that there are eyes on him the child cannot see, that he is held. Whether or not a modern person believes the content, the function is undeniable. The child's terror eases into something bearable. He will go near the water again. The band cannot afford a member who cannot. Then he goes to the healer and does the hardest thing of all. He tends the one who tends everyone else. She spent yesterday as the strongest person in the camp and the most frightened, and she has had no one to set her own fear down with, because she is the one others set their fear down with. The shaman is the only person in the band whose role lets him hold the healer. They are the two halves of the same ancient craft. She keeps the body, he keeps the mind and the spirit, and tonight, for once, she gets to be held by her counterpart instead of holding the world. This is the architecture these people built, with no writing and no theory, purely by paying attention to what human beings need. A healer for the body, a shaman for the mind, an elder for the memory, hunters for the food, mothers for the future. Not primitive, not simple, a complete society. Every essential human need assigned to someone, the whole thing balanced around a fire at the edge of a lake. Evening. And then, as the light goes, the shaman does the thing he was preparing for all day. He lifts the red deer skull onto his head. The change in the camp is immediate and total. The man they joked with an hour ago is gone. The antlered figure that moves into the firelight is something else. And everyone, even the skeptical, even the exhausted, feels it. He begins to move around the fire in the slow, deliberate circling they have all seen since childhood. And he begins to make the sound, the low vibration that is half voice and half something older. The sound the healer once said she could feel in her sternum. And the whole camp is pulled, together, out of their 40 separate exhausting days and into one shared thing. This is the technology working at full power. The flames, the smoke, the antlers throwing branched shadows up the shelters, the rhythm, the repeated sound, every element engineered, across countless generations of trial and error, to do one thing: dissolve, for a while, the boundaries between people, so that a group that has been frightened and frayed becomes again a single body. They feel the near loss of the child together. They feel the safe return of the travelers together. They grieve and celebrate in the same breath, in the same place, at the same time. And because they do it together, it finishes. The residue lifts. Tomorrow, they will be a whole band again, instead of 40 raw individuals. The 17-year-old, sitting in the circle with his dog against his leg, feels himself brought back across the threshold. He came home a few hours ago in body. Now, in the firelight, under the antlers, he comes home the rest of the way. He could not have told you that was what he needed. He only knows that something in his chest that had been held tight since the northern ridge, finally, quietly, lets go. Night. Late, when the fire is low and the camp is finally deeply at peace, the shaman takes the skull off, and he is just a man again. Tired, in the specific way of someone who has carried the emotional weight of 40 people and set it down for them. This is the cost of his craft, the part no one sees. He takes their fear into himself to give it shape, and some of it stays. He is the vessel the whole band pours into. Someone has to be. He chose it, or it chose him, long ago. He sits alone with the antlers on the rack beside him and thinks, as he often does, about the ones who wore the skull before him and the ones who will wear it after. He did not invent any of this. He inherited it, the movements, the sounds, the knowledge of how to hold a grieving camp, from the shaman who taught him, who inherited it from the one before, down a chain as long as the elder's map, as long as the healer's plant lore, as long as the whole unbroken human effort to keep each other alive and sane in a dangerous world. He thinks about the boy who will one day take the skull from him. He has not chosen him yet, but he watches, the way he watched the 17-year-old tonight, feeling the ritual reach him, for the child with the inward look, the one who feels the mood of the band before it speaks, the one who will be able to carry what he carries. When he finds him, he will begin to teach him, slowly, the way all the knowledge in this camp is taught, by doing, beside someone who already knows. Outside, the lake is still. The stars turn over the black water, and the shaman knows their names and their stories, because keeping the stories is also his work. Somewhere in the camp the healer sleeps, held for once. The 4-year-old sleeps without dreaming of water. The travelers sleep in their own shelters, all the way home at last. And a man who spent the day being the mind of a whole people sits quietly with a deer skull, one foot in this world and one in the other, keeping watch over the sleep of everyone he carried. Tomorrow is the last day. Tomorrow comes whether you are ready for it or not. So that was day 6 in the Stone Age, the shaman, the man we were taught to dismiss as a fraud in a costume, who turns out to have held the single most sophisticated job in the camp. He was not exploiting anyone. He was doing the work no one else could do, taking the formless, dangerous feelings of a whole group, grief, terror, relief, the raw residue of a near drowning and a dangerous homecoming, and giving them a shape, a container, a way to be felt together and then finished. He was the camp's therapist, its priest, its funeral director, its keeper of stories and stars and thresholds, all at once, with nothing but firelight, rhythm, and an 11,000-year-old deer skull that you can still go and see today. This was real. The red deer antler headdresses of Star Car are among the most remarkable ritual objects ever found in Britain. Genuine artifacts, worked and pierced to be worn, roughly 11,000 years old. We cannot know exactly what the person who wore one believed or did, but every human society we have ever studied has someone who does the shaman's work, who tends the group's shared mind, marks its thresholds, and carries its grief, because human beings have always needed it. We did not invent that need recently. It is at least as old as a skull in the Yorkshire ground. Tomorrow, day 7, the final day, we pull back from any single person and see the whole band at once. The hunter, the healer, the elder, the traveler, the mother, the shaman, and everyone we have not named, living a single, ordinary, extraordinary day at the edge of the lake. And we ask the question this whole week has been building toward. These people had everything a human being needs. So what happened to them? Day 7, the band. For 6 days we have followed them one at a time. The hunter and his dog. The healer with her willow bark. The old man with the map inside his head. The travelers who walked north for stone. The mother who ran into the reeds. The shaman with the red deer skull. One person, one day, one life at a time. Today we do something different. Today we pull back, and we watch all of them at once, the whole band, 40 people, living a single ordinary day at the edge of the lake. The last day of our week. And by the end of it, we are going to answer the question this entire series has been quietly building toward. Because these people had everything, a healer for the body, a shaman for the mind, an elder for the memory, hunters, mothers, toolmakers, teachers. A complete world balanced and working at the edge of the water. So what happened to them? Where did they go? This is day 7 of a week in the Stone Age, the finale. Let's step back 12,000 years one last time. Before dawn. The lake is black and still, and the camp sleeps. And for a moment there is nothing but the water and the stars, and 40 people breathing in the dark. Then, one by one, the day begins. The same way it has begun 10,000 mornings before this one. The old man wakes first, as he always does, and tests his knees in private, and rises to become the elder before anyone sees the effort. The healer surfaces from a sleep that finally came, her 2 children warm against her, her youngest breathing slow and clear now, the water 2 days behind him. The young hunter stirs with his dog already awake beside him, home from the north, the northern ridge still somewhere in his chest. The shaman lies quiet, feeling the mood of the camp the way you feel weather coming. This is the thing 6 days of single stories could not quite show you. How they fit together. Not 40 separate people, but one organism made of 40 parts, each carrying a piece of what the whole needs to survive. Wake any one of them, and you wake a strand of a web that reaches to all the others. This morning, for the last time, we get to see the whole web at once. Dawn. With the first light, the flint comes out. The stone the travelers carried 3 days home from the north, grey-black, glass-smooth, the best for 100 miles, is unpacked in the dawn, and the camp's toolmaker sits down to do the oldest skilled work these people know. He takes a nodule the size of a fist, and with a hammerstone and a piece of antler and a lifetime of practice, he begins to strike. Each blow is precise, angled, controlled, and long, thin blades peel off the core, one after another, sharper than any metal the world will make for another 8,000 years. From those blades come the microliths, tiny worked points and edges, set into wooden shafts with pine resin and sinew, that tip every arrow and spear and knife in the camp. This is why the young men risked the rivers. This is what the elders' map was for. The whole journey of day 4, the whole crisis of day 3, comes down to this quiet morning sound, stone on stone, and the blades stacking up that will feed the band through the coming season. The 17-year-old watches the toolmaker work, and understands the chain now in a way he never did before. The elder remembered the way, the travelers walked it. The toolmaker shapes the stone. The hunter carries the finished arrow into the forest. Each of them holds one link, and the meat on the fire tonight will exist because every link held. He used to think of the hunt as his own achievement. He does not anymore. Morning. By full morning, the whole web is in motion, and it is beautiful to watch. The hunters go out with the new tipped arrows, the dogs ranging ahead. The gatherers move along the shore and into the woods, the healer among them, her 7-year-old daughter beside her with a small basket, learning the plants the way her mother learned them, and her mother's mother, back into the dark. Along the water, others check fish traps woven from reed and hazel, lift eels from the shallows, cut new reeds for shelters and baskets. Children do what children do, copy everyone, get underfoot, and absorb, without knowing it, every skill they will need for the whole of their lives. Nobody gives orders. There is no chief barking commands, no overseer counting the catch. This is one of the deepest truths about these people, and one of the hardest for us to believe. They were profoundly egalitarian. The band ran on knowledge and cooperation, not on hierarchy. The elder was heeded because he remembered, not because he ruled. The healer was valued because she healed. The hunter shared his kill with everyone, always, because that was the unbreakable law. You share, because next time it will be you with nothing, and the sharing is the only insurance policy anyone has. 40 people, no boss, no money, no debt, running one of the most stable ways of life the human species has ever devised. It lasted, in one form or another, for more than 90% of human history. 90%. Everything we usually call history, the pyramids, the empires, the wars, the cities, the kings, all of it fits into the thin, final sliver of the human story. This, what we are watching at the edge of this lake, is the shape of almost all the time human beings have ever spent on Earth. It is not a rough draft of us. It is us, most of us, most of the time. Midday. At midday, the band eats, and the eating tells you everything about who they are. The morning's catch is shared out: fish, eel, the last of some dried meat, hazelnuts, roots the gatherers dug, the sharp green of wild garlic and sorrel. It is passed hand to hand until everyone has enough. The best of it does not go to the strongest or the loudest. It goes to whoever needs it: the nursing mother, the recovering child, the old man whose body can no longer earn its own food and does not have to, because that is not how this works. And you can see in this one shared meal every person we have followed. The elder, eating food he did not catch, honored rather than resented. The healer, whose knowledge keeps them all from the dark. The young hunter, whose arrow helped bring the food. The mother, watching her recovered son eat with the fierce, quiet attention of someone who nearly lost him. The shaman, who holds the whole group's mind together. And 40 others we never named, each one a full human life, with loves and fears and skills and private griefs as real as yours, sitting at the same water, sharing the same fish, under the same sky. They are not extras in someone else's story. For 1 week, we borrowed a handful of them and gave them the attention they deserve. But every single person at that lake was the main character of their own life, exactly as you are the main character of yours. That is the quiet argument this whole series has been making. Not that these people were noble savages, or primitive ancestors, or a lesson. Just that they were people, as fully, completely, achingly human as anyone alive today. Afternoon. In the long golden afternoon, the band does the things that have nothing to do with survival and everything to do with being human. Someone repairs a shelter. Someone teaches a child to nap a small flake. 2 women sit stitching hides with bone needles, talking in a low, easy rhythm. And somewhere near the fire, a bone flute plays because they made music. This is not a guess. Bird bone flutes have been found, drilled with finger holes, from exactly this world. 12,000 years ago, beside this lake, someone lifted a hollow bird bone to their lips and played a tune. And other people listened. And maybe someone hummed along, and for a little while the work stopped and there was only the sound. They made art. They made ornaments, beads of shale and bone and amber, worn and traded and given. They decorated themselves. They cared how things looked. They played. This is the final piece of the case against the word primitive. These were not grim survivors clinging to existence. They had leisure, often more than we do. Studies of hunter-gatherers suggest the work of staying alive took only a few hours a day, and the rest was for exactly this: talk, music, story, craft, children, rest by the water. The young hunter lies back in the afternoon sun, with his dog's head on his chest, and the flute playing somewhere, and the whole camp murmuring around him. And he is, in this moment, as content as any human being has ever been. He does not know he is living in what we will one day look back on and call the Stone Age. He just knows the sun is warm, and the food is caught, and his people are around him. He has no idea that the world he is lying in is already, slowly, beginning to end. Evening. And here, in the evening, is the answer to the question we have carried all week. Nothing dramatic happens. That is the point. There is no disaster, no battle, no plague that wipes them out in a night. The band eats its evening meal, and the shaman moves at the fire in the antlers, and the children fall asleep against their mothers, exactly as they have for 1,000 years. From inside this evening, nothing is wrong. Everything is exactly as it has always been. But step back, far back, further than any of them can see, and watch the water. Because the world these people live in is a world still thawing from an ice age. And as the great ice sheets far to the north melt, over centuries the seas rise. Slowly, invisibly, from the inside of any single life. A hand's width in a generation. Not enough for the young hunter to notice in his lifetime, or his children in theirs. But the land these people live on, the low, rich, wooded plain that once stretched unbroken from here across to the continent, the land we now call Doggerland, drowned beneath what is now the North Sea, that land is going under, marsh by marsh, shore by shore. Season by season, the water comes a little further up the reeds. This lake, this camp, this exact shore where a mother ran after her son, and an old man remembered the way north. All of it will, in time, become part of a landscape of rising water, shifting coasts, and drowning forests. The people will not be destroyed. That is the gentle, haunting truth of it. They will simply move, as the water asks them to, a little at a time, generation after generation. The camp will be used less, then abandoned, then forgotten. And one day, thousands of years from now, the lake itself will silt into peat bog, and the peat will close over the timber platform, and the antler headdress, and the flint blades and the bone flute, and hold them, perfectly, in the dark, until a person with a trowel lifts them back into the light and gives them a name. Starcar. That is what happened to them. Not a catastrophe, a tide. The slow, patient rising of the water that gave them everything, until the world of the lake was gone, and with it a way of living that had lasted longer than everything we call history put together. Night. On this last night, the camp sleeps, and does not know it is the end of anything, because it is not yet, not for them. The elder sleeps with a lifetime of maps and winters and giants folded safe inside him, already copied into younger heads. The healer sleeps with both her children breathing beside her, her knowledge already passing, plant by plant, into her daughter. The young hunter sleeps with his dog, the whole chain of skill running through him now, ready to be handed on. The mother, the toolmaker, the shaman, the 40, all of them asleep at the edge of the still black water, under the wheeling stars, at the end of an ordinary day in a world that was, for all its dangers, complete. They did not vanish. This is the thing to hold on to. Look at your own hands, the willow bark in your medicine, the dog at your feet, the instinct to share food with someone who has none, to sit with the grieving, to mark a homecoming, to carry a story from an old person to a child, to make music when the work is done. All of it is theirs. All of it was worked out, by trial and error and love and loss, by people exactly like these, around fires exactly like this one, across a span of time so vast that everything we usually call history is only its final page. We did not descend from them and leave them behind. We are them, still carrying in our medicine and our music and our kindness and our grief, the inheritance of 40 people at the edge of a lake, 12,000 years ago, who figured out how to be human and passed it, hand to hand, all the way down to us. Outside, the lake is still. The stars turn over the black water, the same stars the elder named, the same names that will be spoken by children not yet born. The water laps a little higher in the reeds than it did 100 years ago, and no one notices, and no one needs to. The fire burns down to embers, the dog sleeps, and a whole world sleeps with it, complete and unhurried, at the edge of the water that gave it everything, and will, in its own slow time, quietly take it back. Tomorrow comes whether you are ready for it or not. It always has. So that was the Stone Age, 1 week, 7 lives, and 1 lake at the edge of the world. We followed a hunter, a healer, an elder, a traveler, a mother, and a shaman, And then today, the whole band together, living the same ordinary day their people had lived for 1,000 years. And we found the answer to what became of them. No disaster, no defeat, just the slow rising of the seas after the ice, the patient drowning of a world called Doggerland, and a people who moved with the water until their lake became a memory in the peat, waiting 11,000 years for someone to dig it up and call it Star Car. But the real ending is not in the ground. It is in you. Every time you take something for a fever, share a meal with someone who has none, sit with a friend in grief, teach a child something an old person taught you, or fall quiet to listen to music at the end of a long day, you are doing something these people did, at this lake, 12,000 years ago. They were not primitive, they were not lesser. They were the first long chapter of us, and they wrote almost the whole book. We just added the last page and put our name on the cover. Thank you for spending this week in the Stone Age with me. If this changed the way you picture these people even a little, that is the whole reason this channel exists. Watch the full week from day one if you joined us part way. The hunter's first kill is where it all begins. Subscribe, because next time we are stepping into a different world entirely, in a different corner of the past. Tell me in the comments, which of the 7, the hunter, the healer, the elder, the traveler, the mother, the shaman, or the whole band, stayed with you the most? As always, we'll see you in the past.